Hi, this video lecture is all about running records. You will need your PowerPoint as well as coding and scoring errors at a glance as we go through slides 1 through 6. Running records are a method of assessing reading that can be done quickly and frequently. They are a tool for coding, scoring, and analyzing a child's reading behaviors. Many uses for running records. First and foremost, it's very important that we place children in their appropriate instructional level. Running records help us do that, as well as evaluate text difficulty. We want to focus on texts that are appropriate for a child's instructional level. So running records can give us that information about text difficulty, instructional level, as well as just maybe it might be just too easy for the child. Running records help capture reading behaviors that can be analyzed. It gives us that critical information that we need to figure out what will be our next steps in instructing this child. Running records help keep a record change over time. So depending upon at what point you're starting your running record, it's going to give us that analytical note-taking data that we need to see how a child is progressing. It also helps us give us critical decisions about a child's grouping. We want to make sure that a child is in the appropriate reading group with the appropriate materials on their instructional level, as well as giving us that hard data that we need for referral for special ed so we can track what the child's strengths are as well as their areas of need. Running records communicate a child's progress to administrators, teachers, and parents as well. It's a great conversation tool to share with the parent the observations that we made of the child with a running record. When you're taking a running record, the teacher must decide the purpose of the assessment. Are you going to be using a warm read or a cold read? A warm read is doing an assessment on a book that a child has already read, a story that the child was familiar with. You've instructed this child, you've taught the skills and strategies that go along with that book that the reader needs, and then you want to see, can they apply it to the same book, that warm read? Same thing with a cold read, that is, you've taught the skills, the strategies, but now you want to see, can they transfer that learning that you presented to a new piece of text, a cold read. So that's the differences between a warm read and a cold read. So depending upon your purpose, you have to determine that. You're going to sit next to a child as the child reads the text, but before starting to read, you as the teacher will give a brief introduction of the book, just very brief about what it's about. As the child is reading, you watch very closely and you code the child's reading behaviors on a typed script of text, which is much easier to code the text, or on a blank sheet of paper. So depending upon your expertise in taking a running record or what your preference is, you have two choices here. Running records use a set of coding conventions, and that's what we use to record the behavior. We're simply observing, and then we're recording the behaviors using these set of conventions. Under no circumstances do we intervene unless the child needs it. For example, you need to take off your teacher hat. It is so easy that we want to just jump in there and assist and help, but this is not the time to do so. This is our time that we are observing. So when it's time for us to put on our teacher hat, we'll know what to do. As I mentioned before, running records do use a set of coding conventions, but we also need to determine what is considered an error. So if you take a look on the left side of the PowerPoint right here, what is an error? A substitution is an error. An omission is an error. An incorrect attempt is an error. A told word is an error, as well as an insertion. All these count as errors on a written record as we begin to score it. What is not an error are self-corrections, repetitions, a correct attempt, words that are pronounced differently in a child's dialect or an accent or their speech. So we have to be very cognizant of that, not to take away that as an error. They do not count as errors. Here are some more key points down here when we're recording or scoring a running record. You count each word in a skip line as an error. Yep, each one. If there's a skip page, you count it as one error, then you subtract the word count for that page from the total word count. Proper nouns that are read incorrectly are only counted as errors once. However, if it's not a proper noun, all other words are counted incorrectly each time as errors. So let's take a look at our coding and counting errors and how we code the text. If you give me a moment, I want to switch over, but you're going to use this coding and error count by Fontes and Pendel. Just give me 1 second to go over to the bigger one. Thank you. Here we go. So coding and scoring errors at a glance. I'm not going to go through every single one, but I do want to bring this to your attention so you take some time to preview it on your own. On this sheet, you have in the first column the behavior. So you have accurate reading. What the reader does here, what accurate reading means, that the reader read the words correctly, and how to code. You have an option with accurate reading. You can either place a check mark above each word, or you can leave it blank if you have a scripted text. As you can hear, then you have the example that it shows you how to actually mark it and that it's not an error. So you go all the way across and it gives you an example. Let's do one more with substitutions. So substitution gives an incorrect response. You write the substituted word above the word in the text. So for example, the word in the text is wonder. The student said worry, so you write worry above wonder to show us what the word was substituted for, and it is not. If it is not corrected, it counts as an error. So as you use this coding and scoring errors at a glance sheet, go ahead and familiarize yourself with it so you know what constitutes as errors as well as how to code the text. It's really important to be consistent in your buildings on how you code, so then as we're sharing running records from one teacher to the other, we have that commonality and it's universal. So give me a moment to go back to our PowerPoint. Thank you. Give me 1 second. So now that we have completed a running record with the conventions and consistent coding, you have the option to find out how well the child understood what they have read. Some teachers may or may not choose to do this portion of a running record, but then it gives you the full picture. So after the running record has been completed, you ask them to retell the story in their own words. You ask them, this way you'll find out how well did they understand the story, were they able to retell in sequence, were they able to recall the characters. If it was nonfiction, how well did they capture the main idea with supporting details about that particular topic. You can also ask the child, did they like the story or did they not like it? Just as important as you are coding the text, it's important to take notes and write appropriate comments on the top of a form that you have that may be created by the company that you're using or on a blank sheet of paper, and it just gives you that additional anecdotal notes that you need to know that will help you go back and refer to about the reading behaviors of your student. So this is the first portion of our running records, and then we'll continue on with the next one with the next set. Thank you.